On May 145, 23 German women waited quietly in a temporary prison camp near the Austrian border. Their swollen bellies were a sobering reminder that no one was spared in the war. As American soldiers approached the barbed wire fence, one of them, 19-year-old Elsa Hoffman, placed her hand on her belly and felt her baby kick. The oldest woman in the group, Margaret, trembled as she whispered, "They're coming. May God bless us all." Elsa had heard the stories. The whispered warnings about what happened when enemy troops discovered defenseless women had reached every German woman. Before her husband Klaus disappeared in the chaos of Berlin's collapse, he had sworn to protect her child at all costs. Although her own heart was pounding against her ribs, Elsa replied, "Stay calm. There's nothing we can do." The gate opened with a squeak. 3 American soldiers entered, their boots crunching on the gravel. The women naturally moved closer together, forming a protective circle. Despite his uniform, Elsa could see that the youngest soldier, who couldn't have been more than 20, had a youthful, delicate face. The leading soldier addressed Margaret as "ma'am." He spoke broken German but understood it. "We need to know. How many of you are pregnant? When are the babies due?" Margaret's eyes widened. "Why do you ask?" The soldier and his comrades looked at each other. "Just answer the question, please." Finally, Margaret replied, 15 of us. Some are still months away, others only weeks." The soldier nodded slowly and wrote something down in a small notebook. Elsa looked at his face, searching for the violence she had been warned about, for cruelty. Instead, she saw something that confused her more than anything else. Concern. Are there problems? Is anyone sick? Is anyone? Elsa heard herself exclaim in a voice louder than her own. "We are all hungry. Every day the baby, my baby, moves less." The soldier clenched his jaw. Elsa couldn't follow his rapid English as he turned to his friends. Then he turned back to her, and their eyes met briefly. "What's your name?" "Elsa. Hoffman. Elsa. Elsa, how old are you?" 19. Something flashed across his face. He squared his shoulders and closed his notebook. "We'll be back tomorrow morning." Early, Margaret took Elsa by the arm as the soldiers marched away. "Why did you talk to them?" "You told them about the baby, but why?" As she watched the soldiers disappear behind the barrier, Elsa murmured, "I don't know." "But when I told him about it, did you see the look on his face? What was it like?" "He seemed angry, but not at us." Elsa had trouble sleeping that night. She kept seeing the soldier's face, hearing his tense voice as he said they would be back, and thinking about how he had written in his notebook. She wondered what the next day would bring, and hummed the lullaby her mother had taught her, while her baby kicked weakly. The next morning, she was awakened by unexpected noises. The sound of trucks and excited English voices woke Elsa. Her back ached from sleeping on the narrow mattress, and she stumbled to her feet and went to the window of the converted barn where they were staying. "Oh my God," whispered Margaret beside her. "What is that?" Outside the barrier stood 4 military trucks. Soldiers moved quickly and purposefully as they unloaded wooden crates. While others carried the crates to the camp entrance, the same young soldier as yesterday directed the operation, giving instructions and making gestures. "Everyone back," a guard shouted in German. "Stay away from the door." The door swung open and the women gathered cautiously. 6 soldiers carried the containers inside. Yesterday's leader, whom Elsa had heard someone refer to as Sergeant Morrison, stepped forward. His German was poor as he said, "We have brought supplies. Medical supplies. Food." "Milk?" Elsa repeated, convinced she had misheard. "Powdered milk," Morrison said, "for the mothers when the babies come." At his request, another soldier opened one of the boxes. Inside were bottles, clean bandages, cans of powdered milk, and small jars of what looked like vitamins. Margaret took a hesitant step forward. "What are you doing?" Morrison looked stern. "Because it's the right thing to do." He paused, as if he had difficulty pronouncing the German. "Yes, you are prisoners, but you are also mothers. This war was not started by the babies." One of the younger American soldiers muttered in English, "Our commanders won't like this." After Morrison reacted strongly in English, he switched back to German and said, "Then you can turn to me. We also brought a doctor with us. She will examine all of you." A woman in an American uniform came in, carrying her doctor's bag. She had good eyes and strong hands and was perhaps 30 years old. In flawless German, she introduced herself as Lieutenant Sarah Chen. "I work as a nurse. If you don't mind, I'd like to see how you and your children are doing." The women exchanged worried glances. They hadn't expected this at all. Elsa said abruptly, "I'll go first," and stepped forward. Elsa fended off Margaret's attempt to take her by the arm. They wouldn't bring a nurse if they wanted to harm us. Lieutenant Chen smiled gently. "I am grateful to you." "What is your name?" "Elsa Hoffman." "Elsa, how many months along are you?" "I think 7, maybe 8. It's hard to say at this point." Chen opened her suitcase and nodded. "Let's take a look. When was the last time you felt the baby?" "Not much, but this morning." "Not like before." As the nurse examined Elsa with gentle but thorough hands, her face grew serious. Morrison stood at the door with his arms crossed, watching them. Elsa saw that he looked tense, as if he were expecting something. "You're malnourished," Chen finally concluded. She turned to Morrison and said, "The baby is small, too small. She needs protein. Not just bread and water, but proper meals." "Could you put together a list?" Morrison asked. "Everything they need?" "Sergeant, that's going to be a long list." "I don't care. Make it." Elsa looked at him with a mixture of confusion and something she didn't want to call hope. "Why?" she asked in broken English. "Why are you helping me?" Morrison looked at her for a long time. He spoke slowly in German. "My sister. She died giving birth to her child in her home state of Ohio." His voice grew hoarse. "The doctor came too late. Maybe I can help you, but I couldn't help her." After 3 days, the camp changed in a way Elsa would never have thought possible. Instead of the stale bread and thin soup they had been eating, the American soldiers brought food, real food. Milk, fresh bread, cheese, eggs, and vegetables. Lieutenant Chen joked that they could run a dairy because there was so much powdered milk. Chen watched Elsa drink the warm milk and told her to drink slowly. "It will take a while for your stomach to get used to it." Elsa nodded and enjoyed every drop. She already felt stronger. In response to the food, the baby began to move more. However, the physical relief was accompanied by a deeper confusion that kept her awake at night. One evening, she said to Margaret, "I don't understand them. The enemy is us. These people were fought by our brothers and husbands. Maybe they killed their comrades. And yet. But they still bring us milk," Margaret said. Her fingers knitted as if by themselves as she worked on a small blanket Chen had given her wool for. "Somewhere, my son is fighting. Or was there even a fight?" She hesitated. "I'm not sure if he's still alive. Those American boys are someone's sons too. Does that mean it's right? What have we done? What has Germany done?" Margaret's hands became motionless. "No, child. It's not right in any way. But maybe." Her eyes were tired as she looked at Elsa. "Maybe that's what happens when the killing stops. We remember that we are human beings." Morrison and another soldier stepped through the barn door. "Elsa Hoffman." Elsa felt her heart skip a beat. "Yes? You and the 3 people closest to delivery need to be relocated." She felt a wave of fear wash over her. "Where are we being relocated?" "To a local, proper hospital." Lieutenant Chen quickly added, "You're not in trouble," after noticing her look. "The Austrian civilians aren't happy about it, but Lieutenant Chen says you need better facilities." "It's for the babies," Elsa muttered. "The Austrians despise us." "We took over their country," Morrison said firmly. "Yes, well, they'll have to put up with it. Pack your things. The vehicle will leave in 20 minutes. Elsa's hands trembled as she packed her few belongings, including a letter from her mother, a photo of Klaus, and the little blanket Margaret had knitted. A medical facility, real medical care for her child. Margaret called softly, "Elsa." She pressed the unfinished blanket into Elsa's hands and said, "Take this with you, for when the baby arrives. But it's not finished yet." "You'll finish it." Margaret's eyes sparkled. "You'll have time, warm hands, and a full belly. You'll get through this. Your child will get through this." It was a strange ride in the truck through rural Austria. Elsa sat with 3 other pregnant women, all of whom were silent, watching the world pass them by. Fields turning green in spring, villages with crumbling buildings, people stopping to stare at the American trucks. Morrison took the lead. Every now and then he looked back to see how they were doing. Elsa called out in English, "Sergeant," the word sounding strange on her tongue. "What was your sister's name?" Startled, he turned around. "Mary." Mary was her name. "I'm sorry about Mary." His face softened somehow. "Yes, I agree. The hospital, converted into a convent, has cool, thick stone walls. When the German inmates were brought in, Austrian nuns walked through the corridors with carefully neutral expressions on their faces. Lieutenant Chen had already arrived and was supervising the setting up of the maternity ward. She led Elsa to a spotless room with a real bed after saying, "This way. You will stay here until the baby is born. We will keep an eye on you every day." As Elsa sat on the bed and felt the soft mattress, tears welled up in her eyes. She couldn't hold them back. She let out all her feelings, including fear, hunger, and doubt. Chen sat down next to her and gently placed her hand on her shoulder without saying a word. "I was afraid they would hurt us," Elsa finally murmured. "I assumed. Everyone said—" "I know what everyone said," Chen replied quietly. "But not all soldiers are the same." She hesitated. "Not all are the same. Sergeant Morrison is a decent guy. He sees you as more than just an enemy. But we are enemies. Elsa, the war is over. We are just people trying to live now." Elsa felt her baby kicking violently that night as she lay in a real bed for the first time in months. "We'll make it," she said, placing both hands on her belly. "I don't know how, but we'll make it." 2 weeks later, Elsa woke up in excruciating pain. Each contraction was stronger than the last. Lieutenant Chen, calm and professional, arrived within minutes after a nun had fetched him. With a quick glance at Elsa, Chen explained, "It's time. You're doing well. Just breathe deeply." But as the hours passed, Chen's face grew concerned. The baby was not in the right position. Although she had been eating better for weeks, Elsa was exhausted and her strength was waning. Morrison had come in at some point and was pacing back and forth outside the door, and Chen said, "We may have to do a C-section, but I'm not a surgeon, I'm a nurse. I've assisted, but I've never—" Morrison interrupted her. "There's a German doctor. 15 miles away in the prisoner of war camp, Dr. Friedrich Weber. He worked as a surgeon in Berlin." "A prisoner?" Morrison said. "Yes, but he has the skills. I'll bring him here. The colonel will never agree to treat another enemy by taking in an enemy prisoner." Morrison was already on the move when he said, "Then I won't ask for permission. Keep her stable. I'll be back in 3 hours." Through a fog of agony, Elsa heard it all. One of her own doctors, a German. She was aware of the irony. To save a German child, an American soldier was breaking the law. Chen stayed by her side, supporting her as he washed her forehead. "Elsa, hang in there. Please hang in there." Time lost all meaning. Fear and pain mingled. Elsa wondered if Klaus was still alive and if he would ever see her child. She thought of her mother, who had most likely been killed in the attack on Hamburg. She remembered that Morrison's sister Mary had died in Ohio while giving birth to her child. "I'd rather not die," she said. "You won't," Chen said firmly. "I won't let that happen." The door exploded. Morrison came in with an older man wearing a tattered German uniform and clutching his doctor's bag. Dr. Weber's gaze immediately scanned the room to assess the situation. "How long has she been in labor?" he asked in German. Chen replied in the same language. 14 hours. "The baby is restless. The heartbeat is getting weaker." Elsa was examined by Weber, who moved to her side. "We have to start immediately. Do you have surgical instruments?" "Yes." "Then prepare her. We may have half an hour." He looked at Morrison. "I came here because of you. I need your trust now." Morrison nodded. "Save them both." The operation was a jumble of voices and pain. Elsa felt the pulling, the strain, and then a cry. The cry of a baby, the cry of her child. "A girl," Weber announced in a passionate voice, "a healthy girl." After Chen had wrapped the baby, he placed her in Elsa's arms. She was small, rosy, and flawless. As Elsa looked down at her daughter, she felt the world change. "What will you name her?" Chen asked softly. Elsa looked up at Morrison, who was standing in the doorway, a look of relief on his face, but also something else. Hope, perhaps. Then she turned to Chen, who had supported her throughout. Finally, she turned to Dr. Weber, who had risked everything to save a stranger's child. "I hope," Elsa said, "because you gave me that, her name is Hope." Morrison cleared his throat loudly. "That's a beautiful name." Despite his own exhaustion, Dr. Weber completed the procedure with steady hands. Morrison came to him after he was finished. "I am grateful to you, doctor." "I remain your prisoner," Weber said. Morrison paused and said, "Yes, but you are also a man who just saved 2 lives." "That is significant. That is important." Elsa held Hope close to her, feeling her daughter's tiny heartbeat against her chest as Weber was led back to the prisoner of war camp. Outside, spring was turning to summer. The conflict was over. The world lay in ruins. But here, in this room, there was life right now. There was goodwill. There was hope. Perhaps, Elsa thought, that was enough to begin rebuilding. Summer came unexpectedly gently. 7 German newborns now lay in the infirmary, which had been set up for a single birth, and their cries filled the stone corridors of the old monastery. Elsa marveled at how something so small could hold so much potential as she watched Hope sleeping in the makeshift crib next to her bed. During her morning examination, Lieutenant Chen noted, "They are recovering well. In another week you can return to the camp." Elsa was struck hard by this remark. Back to the camp. The uncertainty, the barbed wire, and the barn again. In this peaceful room with fresh sheets and regular meals, she had allowed herself to forget that she was still a prisoner. "What will become of us?" Elsa asked quietly. "Of the babies?" Chen's face clouded over. "I'm not sure. It's a complex problem. The division of Germany is underway. There are refugees everywhere. The camps are bursting at the seams. Will the Americans keep us here too? That's not my decision to make." Chen carefully packed her medical bags. "But Sergeant Morrison is advocating for you, for all of you. He has sent letters to the Red Cross, his superiors, and even some congressmen from Ohio." Elsa's throat tightened. Why is he so concerned? Because he's seen too many dead people. Chen paused at the door and said, "I think saving you and Hope helps him remember why we fought in the first place. Not for revenge, but for that. For life." Elsa's heart beat faster when Morrison showed up later that afternoon with news. "We found him," he said bluntly. "Klaus Hoffman, your husband, he's still alive." Elsa's knees went weak. She sat down firmly on the bed. Where? How? In a British prisoner of war camp in northern Germany. He was injured, but he's better now. This has been confirmed by the Red Cross. Morrison handed her a piece of paper. "He sent this." Elsa opened the letter with trembling hands. Before her eyes was Klaus's handwriting, which she knew and loved. "Please know that I am still alive and thinking of you constantly, Elsa, my beloved. Rumor has it that the Americans have arrested you. I hope you are safe. I pray for the safety of our child. I will find you, I swear it. Hold on to me, your Klaus, me." Elsa's face was covered in tears. He's not sure. Hope is foreign to him. Morrison said gently, "Right back. I'll make sure he gets it." Elsa looked up at him, this American soldier who had transformed into someone she never thought possible, a companion. "I appreciate everything you've done. I don't know how I can repay you." "You don't have to repay me," Morrison said firmly. "Just take care of the child. Raise her to be better than us. That's payment enough." Elsa wrote and updated her letter to Klaus over the next few days, trying to convey to him the fear, the unexpected generosity, and the birth of her daughter. She told him about Dr. Weber, Morrison, and Chen, and about the medicine and milk that had saved their lives. She wrote, "I named her Hope because that's what these strangers gave us when we were at our lowest. I wish the world were different. I hope that adversaries would treat each other with humanity again." As she sealed the letter, however, there was a disturbance in the hallway. Loud voices, sharp and angry, the defensive tone in Morrison's voice. The voice of another man, cold and authoritative. Chen's face turned pale as she rushed into the room. "Have hope. Right now you are being relocated." "Who? Where?" "On the colonel's orders. Today, all German prisoners will be transferred to a larger facility. Immediately." When Elsa took Hope in her arms, her hands trembled. "But the other babies aren't old enough to travel." "I understand. Morrison is trying to delay it, but..." The door opened. Another American officer entered, his uniform clean, his face stern. Morrison loomed behind him, his face red with anger, his fists clenched. "Mrs. Hoffman," the colonel said in broken German, "in an hour, you and the other women will be ready to go. Gather your belongings." Morrison protested. "These women have just given birth, sir. Some of them a week ago or less. They don't have the strength." "Oh, Sergeant, that's not our problem. Our hospital is not a charity. They must be treated according to the appropriate procedures, as they are enemy nationals." "Are the channels correct?" Morrison's tone rose. "These are mothers who have just given birth." "Enough, Sergeant." The colonel's voice turned cold. "You have already abused your power on multiple occasions. You are lucky I am not reporting you for unauthorized use of military resources." Morrison remained silent, despite his clenched jaw. The colonel turned back to Elsa. "Mrs. Hoffman, give me an hour." Morrison punched the wall as the colonel walked away. "Shit. I'm sorry, Elsa. I tried." Elsa whispered, "I know," as she pulled Hope closer. "You exceeded everyone's expectations, more than we deserved." "Don't say that. Basic human decency was something you deserved. You don't have to work for that." Chen appeared with a bag. "I brought medicine, bandages, bottles, and baby food. It's not much, but it's something." Her eyes were filled with tears. "I sincerely apologize." The hour passed much too quickly. With their infants crying in the heat, Elsa and the other women finally ended up in a vehicle. Margaret, who had been brought from the main camp to help with the babies, was also there. "Where are they taking us?" one of the younger women asked in a frightened voice. "I'm not sure," Margaret said, "but we have our children and each other. That's something." Elsa turned around as the truck drove away. Morrison watched with his shoulders hunched and his hands in his pockets. Chen stood next to him, dabbing at his eyes. They had tried. Against orders, against custom, against the natural hostility that war bred. They had tried to help. Elsa began to sing softly, the same song her mother had taught her, while Hope sobbed in her arms. As the military truck drove them into an unknown future, the other mothers joined in, their voices mingling in the back. With thousands of German prisoners housed in a huge camp surrounded by high fences and watchtowers, the new facility was exactly what Elsa had feared. Elderly men, women, and children were all housed in large barracks that offered little comfort and little privacy. As they were led into a crowded barracks, Margaret tried to find a silver lining by saying, "At least we're together. We stayed together because of the mothers and babies." That was true, but it was little consolation. The conditions were harsh. Once again, there was barely enough to eat. There was little medical care. The American soldiers here weren't mean, but they weren't Morrisons either. They were exhausted, overworked, and just trying to control an impossible situation. Elsa rationed every bottle of formula Chen had given her to make it last as long as possible. Fearing that her daughter might get sick here, she kept a close eye on Hope. Other infants around her were crying, from heat, from hunger, from the general suffering in the camp. Through tears, a young mother said, "My milk has dried up. I can't feed my son. What should I do?" Even though she knew it wouldn't work, Elsa shared her milk with others. Other mothers followed suit, pooling their limited resources. In an attempt to bring some order to the chaos, they took turns caring for the infants and singing to them. Weeks passed. The barracks were like ovens in the summer heat. Klaus had never received Elsa's letter. Morrison wasn't there to guarantee its delivery. She had no idea if he had gotten into trouble for helping her. That thought kept her awake at night. Then, on a hot August morning, everything changed. One of the guards called out, "Elsa Hoffman, please come to the administration office." She felt a wave of fear wash over her. Margaret grabbed her arm. "Don't go." "It could be that. I have to." Margaret had gotten hope from Elsa. "If I don't come back, you'll come back," Margaret said firmly. "You have to." The walk to the administration building seemed endless. The thoughts racing through Elsa's mind grew worse and worse. Had they found out something new about Klaus? Would Hope be taken away from her, deported? But when she entered the office, she stopped abruptly. Morrison was standing there in a new outfit and beamed at her with a smile when he saw her. "Sergeant Morrison," Elsa said in a low voice. "I've been transferred," he said hastily. "I asked for it. Actually, I pulled all my strings." He pointed to a friendly-looking middle-aged woman standing next to him. "Mrs. Elenina Patterson is that person. She works for the Quaker Relief Organization." Mrs. Patterson stepped forward. Her German was very good. "Mrs. We have been trying to transfer nursing mothers and their newborns to better facilities. Hoffman, places where the babies can thrive and where you can get the care you need." "I'm confused," Elsa muttered. Morrison grinned broadly. "You're leaving this place with us. Hope, you and 15 other mothers with babies. There is a camp for displaced persons in Bavaria. Real accommodations, healthcare, and adequate food are better than here, even if it's not ideal. But how?" Mrs. Patterson smiled slightly and remarked, "Sergeant Morrison was quite persistent. He presented your story, along with the cases of the other mothers, to a number of humanitarian organizations. We have permission to transfer you." Elsa's eyes filled with tears. "I'm speechless." "Pack your things," Morrison replied quietly. "You're leaving tomorrow." Elsa held Hope close that night as she told her about the man who had been persistent and had seen humanity behind the flags and uniforms. Margaret's eyes were moist as she listened. "Can I come with you?" Margaret asked quietly. Elsa said, "I'll make sure of that. You've taken care of all of us. You deserve it too." Elsa saw Morrison for the last time the next morning as she climbed into the truck that would take her to Bavaria. With Hope in her arms, she approached him. In perfect English, she said, "I want you to know something. When she's older, I'll tell Hope about you and what you did. About the American soldier who showed us that kindness is stronger than hatred." Morrison's eyes lit up. "Elsa, just raise her right. Show her that politics isn't as important as people. That's all I ask of you." "Yes, I will. I swear it." Elsa watched Morrison grow smaller and smaller as the truck drove away. She thought about how humanity had changed them completely and how the conflict had united them as enemies and adversaries. Maybe they weren't friends. The wounds were still too fresh for that. But they were witnesses to each other's humanity, proof that even in the darkest moments, light can shine. Hope's little hand clasped Elsa's fingers as she stirred in her arms. Elsa grinned, because for the first time in a long time, the future didn't look quite so bleak. The Bavarian camp for displaced persons was revealing. No barracks, but real buildings, vegetable gardens, a school for older children, a medical facility staffed by volunteers from various aid organizations. It was a place where Hope could thrive, but it was not a home. Elsa wasn't sure she would ever have a home again. 2 weeks after their arrival, Lieutenant Chen, who now worked for the Red Cross, showed up. After giving Hope a thorough examination, she grinned. "She's fine. Elsa, you did a great job." "Thank you. What about Morrison? Is he—" "He's fine. He's back in the United States. They were discharged last month." Chen pulled out an envelope. "He asked me to give this to you." Elsa's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a photo of Morrison with his family in Ohio, 2 small children at their feet, and he had his arm around his wife. "This is what we fought for, not to destroy, but to protect," he had written on the back in simple German. "Hopefully you and Hope will find your own version of it. James Morrison. Get well soon." "James?" Elsa whispered. "I didn't know his first name." Chen replied, "He didn't know your name was Elsa Marie." It's funny how we can save each other's lives even though we're strangers. However, they weren't complete strangers. Something deeper than names or countries connected them. The decision to see humanity in the face of the enemy and to help, even though it would have been easier to harbor hostility. Months passed. Winter gave way to spring, and autumn to winter. Hope learned to roll over, giggle, and grin. Elsa found a job at the camp, helping to deliver supplies. The other displaced women, all trying to rebuild their lives from the ruins of their old ones, became her friends. Then, exactly 1 year after Hope's birth, on a sunny May morning, a man appeared at the camp gate. Elsa would have recognized him anywhere, despite his thinness, his slight limp, and his face marked by adversity. "Klaus," she said. He forgot his limp and began to run as soon as he saw her. After a long, grim journey, they embraced as if they had come home. He had tears in his eyes. She had tears in her eyes. Astonished by the commotion, Hope also began to cry between them. "Is that—" Klaus stepped back and stared at the child in Elsa's arms. "This is your daughter, Hope." Klaus's hands trembled as he took Hope. He looked at her with amazement, love, and a kind of admiration that only a father can feel when he sees his child for the first time. "She's beautiful. She's flawless," Elsa whispered. "An American soldier is the reason she's still alive. Because he chose kindness over hatred." Elsa told Klaus everything that night as they sat together in the tiny room she had been assigned. She told him about Morrison and Chen, about Dr. Weber, about the hospital where Hope was born, about the milk and the medicine, about the colonel who tried to move them too soon, and about Morrison's transfer so he could continue to help, about the photo and the message. With his arm around her shoulders and Hope sleeping soundly between them, Klaus listened silently. When she was finished, he was silent for a while. Finally, he continued. "I hated them for a year." He looked down at Hope and said, "The Americans, the British, everyone. I hated them because they had won, because they had defeated us, because of everything we had lost. My daughter, however, was spared. My wife was saved by them. How can I understand that?" "I'm not sure," Elsa said. "I'm not sure we should make amends. Maybe we should just remember. Remember that some people make different choices, even in times of conflict when everything pushes us to hate. I owe everything to Morrison, that soldier. We both do. Doing what he asked us to do, raising Hope to be a better person than we were, and teaching her that people are more important than politics, is the only way we can repay him. Klaus nodded slowly. Then that's what we'll do. The years that followed were difficult. Germany was divided. Displaced people like Elsa and Klaus had to fight for every opportunity as the world changed, but they managed to stay alive. They started a new life in a small town in Pennsylvania, found work, and eventually gained entry to the United States through a refugee program. As Hope grew up, she heard the story of her birth, how the American soldier gave medicine and milk when everyone else expected cruelty. She grew up understanding that her life was a gift, bought with compassion instead of violence, and Elsa showed her the picture of Morrison and his family when she was old enough to understand. She said, "This man saved your life. Remember that enemies are capable of treating each other with humanity. Remember that kindness is a choice, and the most important one we can make." Hope Morrison Hoffman, who took Morrison's name as her middle name after receiving U.S. citizenship, stood 30 years later with her own children by her side in a small town in Ohio. For months, she had been searching for James Morrison, the man whose generosity had saved her life. The property had a front yard and was simple and well kept. An old man sat on the porch, his face wrinkled and his hair white, but his eyes were human, compassionate, and thoughtful. "Mr. Morrison," Hope called out. He squinted in the brightness and looked up. "Can I help you?" Hope approached with a pounding heart. "My name is Hope Hoffman. In 1945, you met my mother, Elsa, in Austria." Morrison's eyes widened. He leaned on his cane and slowly stood up. "Who was pregnant, little Elsa?" "You are. I am the child you saved, the one you brought medicine and milk for." Morrison stared at her for a moment. Then tears ran down his gray cheeks and his face contorted. "You're still here. You're here. You're the reason I'm here," Hope replied in a broken voice. "Because you decided to help even though you didn't have to. Because you saw my mother as a human being and not just an enemy." Morrison touched Hope's face with trembling hands, as if to make sure she was real. "I think about you sometimes. About all of you. I wondered if it mattered, and if any of you made it out alive. We made it. We're successful. And now I have my own children." Hope pointed to her two teenagers, who stood there with wide eyes. "I told them your story, the story of the soldier who showed that hatred cannot defeat humanity." Morrison looked at Hope, then back at her children. "I just did the right thing. What anyone should have done." "But some didn't," Hope remarked quietly. "You did, and that changed everything." Morrison and the woman whose life he had saved spent the afternoon together, reminiscing and telling stories. He told her about his return from the war, about the nightmares that plagued him, and about how the only thing he could look back on without regret was helping those pregnant women. Hope told him about her childhood in America, how she had become a nurse like Lieutenant Chen, and how she had dedicated her life to helping displaced persons and refugees in order to continue the generosity that had been shown to her mother. Hope was about to leave as the sun set, but she had one more gift for him. She took out a letter her mother had handwritten. Hope whispered, "Mom died 2 years ago. Of cancer. But she wrote this before she died. She wanted you to have it." Morrison's hands trembled as he opened the letter. The page was filled with Elsa's words, carefully written in English. "To James, I had to write this, even though I don't know if you'll ever read it. You did something more significant than saving my daughters and my life. You restored my faith in people. You showed me that even in the worst of times in history, people can choose compassion over hatred and kindness over brutality. You showed me that we can always choose to be better, and that our darkest times don't have to define who we are." Hope learned about your story as a child. She dedicated her life to serving others, just as you helped us, and became a nurse because of you. Your generosity not only saved 2 lives, but touched hundreds more. I am grateful to you, James Morrison. We appreciate your recognition of our humanity. We appreciate that you sent us medicine and milk when we expected only punishment. I appreciate that you are a person who improves the world in even the smallest ways. You were my adversary, but you were also proof to me that adversaries are simply people who have not yet recognized their shared humanity. With infinite gratitude, Hoffman, Elsa. With tears in his eyes, Morrison read the letter twice. When he finally looked up, he could hardly speak. "I regret that I couldn't tell her. I wish she had known." "She knew," Hope murmured softly. "She always knew." Hope glanced back at the older man on the porch, who was still holding her mother's letter as she and her children drove away. "Mommy, why are you crying?" her daughter asked softly from the back seat. Hope grinned and wiped away her tears. Because I just saw something beautiful. I witnessed a man understand the significance of his compassion, how it reverberated for decades and changed the world in ways he could never have predicted. Did that really change the world? Her son asked. One soldier helping a few prisoners? Hope thought about her mother, about the life they had built together, about her own work as a refugee aid worker, and about her children, who had learned early on that helping others is the greatest calling. Because one soldier had chosen kindness over hostility, she thought about all the lives she had touched and the people she had helped. Yes, she said resolutely. It changed the world. Our world, perhaps, but not the whole world. And sometimes that's enough. The vehicle continued its journey through the rural Ohio countryside, preserving the memory of a moment in 1995 when adversaries became people, when milk and medicine became symbols of hope, and when one man's decision to help showed that even in the worst circumstances, light can shine. And somewhere in the last light of that spring evening, that decision continued to echo and influence future generations, showing that humanity always matters, that kindness is never wasted, and that even the smallest acts of compassion have the power to change the world.